Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going over relatives of the woolly mammoth and as well theropods from the Cretaceous period, and then seeing what's going on with Arctic foxes over in Europe. So we're streaming on also Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. So from Sci News, new species of theropod dinosaur identified in China. A new genus and species of Maniraptoran dinosaur has been described from the fossilized skeletal material found in Inner Mongolia, China. Is that a specific region within the country? Because you have it where China or Mongolia is just north of northern central China, especially where the core of the Gobi Desert is, which is also where we find different species of smaller ceratopsians, different species of larger theropods, and even certain types of long necked sauropods and hadrosaurs. Oh, I didn't know that there was a specific region called Inner Mongolia. Like I'm familiar with the area, just not the name itself. Um, Interesting. So it's almost like Greater Mongolia to an extent when looking at the ecosystem, especially towards like I'm guessing, well, no, I mean the western and central region. You have it where, like, in different areas of modern Mongolia, especially in the forested areas, you will come into contact with the reindeer herds and as well moose, especially brown bears too. But over 72 million years ago, you had different species of sauropods, hadrosaurs, tyrannosaurs roaming this area, and also different species of oviraptors as well. And if you travel to the Ice Age or the Pleistocene, and I know I'm skipping well over nearly 60 to 65 million years, um, actually possibly more, you would come into contact with woolly mammoth herds, Eurasian cave lions, different species of bison, camels, horses that roam the area, as well as woolly rhinos. But let's step back to possibly a bit earlier into the Cretaceous period. Who is this little guy? It looks like some species of dromaeosaur, at least by first glance. It definitely has something between like a some ornitholestes and a velociraptor, sort of a morphology to it. Possibly another species of theropod dinosaur. It's not hitting me. So, reconstruction of the small body theropod dinosaur Fukuvunator paradoxus, a sister taxon of Migmenchian. Yeah, Fukuvunator has already been discovered. The newly identified dinosaur species roamed our planet during the early Cretaceous epoch, some 121 million years ago. Whoa, okay, that is much earlier than what I was expecting. I was truly assuming that this was going to be a late Cretaceous theropod, or I'm guessing it's a dromaeosaur. But no, this is back before larger creatures such as Mapusaurus, Giganotosaurus, large Carcharodontosaurs from South America would have existed. Even different species of large titanosaurs back in the Middle Cretaceous over in South America, North America, and Asia as well. And even different giants that you would find over in Australia and Antarctica, such as Diamantinosaurus. So, a sauropod, this is a shocker. Named Migmenchian Lang, it was a type of Maniraptorian. Maniraptorians were a large group of theropod dinosaurs. They first evolved back in the early Jurassic, over 180 million years ago, and would continue into virtually the end of the Mesozoic, 66 million years ago. So, a group of Silurisaurian dinosaurs that includes birds and some non avian lineages. Um, okay, well, not including the avian dinosaurs being the birds, all of the other Maniraptorans would have gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous. Maniraptorans first appear in the fossil record during the Jurassic period and survive today as living birds. They're characterized by long arms and three fingered hands, as well as a half moon shaped semi-lunate bone in the wrist. Maniraptora is the only dinosaur group known to include flying members, though how far back in this lineage flight extends is still controversial. Um, when it's referring to flying members, no, well, Excluding the smaller birds during the Cretaceous period, as well as the last few million years of the Jurassic, there were no other flying dinosaurs, at least non avian dinosaurs. So when I'm referring to non avian, it's referring to dinosaurs outside of the bird lineage. The different species of gliding dinosaurs, such as Sinornithosaurus, Microraptor, did not have the ability to fly, just simply glide from tree to tree, much like today's gliding possums and squirrels.
That's what I was gonna say. Is that like a squirrel?
Um, yeah, it is interesting how you have two very distantly related groups of animals evolve very similar mutations. So, I guess let's bring up a much larger Manoraptoran. So, let's bring him up, the Therizinosaurus. So, Therizino. So, yeah, especially when it comes to the Coelurosaurs, it doesn't consist of all of them, but some Manoraptorans do include a wide range of different species of Coelurosaur dinosaurs. But Therizinosaurus is definitely a close relative of the group.
Oh, I remember bringing him up the other day. He has some funny pictures.
Oh yeah. When it comes to Therizinosaurus, especially with this model, I think the arms could be a little more robust, or at least just adding a bit more muscle to them. But the claws, and specifically like what they're used for, might have been for Therizinosaurus, is really up for debate. I mean, originally it was thought to help. Well, um, if you go to the very beginning, they were thought to be like the claws of a giant turtle, and instead, like to help the turtle pull like seagrass from the coast, or at least while it was looking for forage. And then later on, it was thought that it belonged to like the claws of a massive theropod dinosaur that would have killed other animals. And looking or further analyses on the claws seem to find that they're not well built for like attacking other species. They possibly could have been used for possibly display, or probably. I mean, you could likely have it where if it's fighting off much smaller animals, it's not going to be very much pressure against those claws, but something like
Claws
the
for
larger.
display?
Yeah.
Really? Huh.
Um, yeah, it'd probably be very attractive to the females it's going to impress, and as well probably make itself look a lot bigger towards other males, and especially other theropod dinosaurs it does not want to have to deal with, such as the Tarbosaurus in the region.
I just thought it would do a belly shake.
Yeah, it probably could. I would say that the belly is not very far off for this Therizinosaurus. I'd say one of the issues is the teeth in its mouth, which it doesn't seem to have contained that type of a display of teeth. Um,
It could do the truffle shuffle.
yeah, very likely. This animal probably didn't have the ability to run. Their Xenosaurus could reach somewhere around 35 feet in length, or pushing 11 meters, and probably reach a height of somewhere between 16 to 17 feet, or pushing around 5 meters, and likely weighed somewhere around 4 to 5 tons. So it was the largest species of Therizinosaur to exist, and it is a close relative of the Dromaeosaur lineage, despite having a very distinct morphology. So this is strictly an herbivore, so feeding off of smaller conifer trees, probably going after different species of shrubs, and maybe going after different species of fruit in the forests amidst Mongolia and China around 71 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. You could have also had it where it might have competed for food occasionally with a different species of hadrosaurs and sauropods in the region. So I think it also is a bit of a mystery as to when it comes to different migration routes that this animal would have taken during different dry and wet seasons at this part of the Cretaceous. Probably wasn't as cool in terms of climate as what you would find in different areas of North America, especially over in Canada and Alaska at this point.
I like what the Ark did with it. The Isle. Isle.
Yeah, this is a pretty decent reconstruction of a Therizinosaurus. In recent years, there's been a lot of added feathering to or plumage to the tail of Therizinosaurus. So it does seem that this animal very likely was covered in an array of feathers, but similar to its distant relatives, the ornithomimids or the ostrich-like dinosaurs such as Gallimimus, Struthiomimus, it probably didn't have feathers that extended beyond its knee or lower thigh. At least that seems to be the case with the ornithomimids based on skin impressions that we have discovered of the animals. Think of Ornithomimus or Gallimimus. Gallimimus existed a bit earlier into the Cretaceous period, like at around 80 million years ago. So it didn't come into contact with specifically Therizinosaurus.
Wait, I found one I've never used.
The Therizinosaurus probably wouldn't care too much about it either. Oh, that's an interesting model. Haven't seen that before. Yeah, and they even have the hatchlings amongst it. It's very possible that Therizinosaurus might have taken care of its young. It does seem to be a very theropod trait. This also would have occurred with the Ornithischian lineage of dinosaurs, or possibly,
Is she wearing lipstick?
you mean the green on the
Yeah.
beak? Um, yeah, I don't know how to describe that. I mean, um, definitely seems like somebody took like some plant material and just stuck it on the species. Very likely though, when it comes to the young Therizinosaurs, I haven't double checked to see if we have evidence for these animals being somewhat.
Wait, is it a
Um,
Therizinosaur or Therizinosaur?
I've heard of it pronounced both ways, but probably a Therizinosaurus. Um, the youngsters might have been somewhat omnivorous, maybe to help give them a quick head start into rapid growth during the early stages of life. But at least when they reached adults, they were pretty much herbivorous. Okay, so let's head back to see what else occurred with the theropod.
Which is not the Therizinosaur.
Yeah, it seems to be a relative of the dromaeosaurs. So, Maniraptora is the only dinosaur. Oh, I already said that. Hold on. So, the fossilized remains of Megmantian Lang were found at the Pigeon Hill locality of the Lungyang Formation near Baoshan Town in Inner Mongolia, China. In the last decade, a new lower Cretaceous freshwater fossil locality, the Pigeon Hill, has drawn extensive attention for yielding exceptionally preserved fossils of the Jehol biota. Oh, the Jehol Basin. Okay, so, well, 121 million years ago, this is approaching the time of not Sinraptor, certain species of like later Mamenchosaurids, as well as Sinornithosaurus, Microraptor. So you have a wide range of different species of sauropods and smaller dromaeosaurs that exist at this time that had the ability to glide. Said China University of Geosciences researcher Yeshwen Lu and colleagues. Although this new locality is far from the famous core area containing the Jehol biota in western Liaoning, the uncovered fossils are similar and closely related in the two areas. Whoa, wow, that is very much intact. You can see the extended toe and even the claw. I don't think that's really a sickle claw, but it's quite long, I think, for a small animal that might be in like the 5 to 6 foot range or pushing somewhere around 1.8 meters. It's a very, yeah, that possibly is a sickle claw. I'm guessing that's what's the toe part of the ankle. Seems rather long. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what part of the skeleton we're looking at there. Oh, no, it's the other way.
Oh, it's just a different. Okay.
Yeah, that was confusing. So, Megmantian Leng is represented by an incompletely preserved skeleton, including a partial left forelimb. Oh, with the complete hand. At least I thought that was a hindfoot. The new theropod material collected at Pigeon Hill differs from all the previously named taxa from this locality and supports the presence of at least one new dinosaurian species in the Longjiang Formation. Yeah, I mean, this is still really fascinating to hear coming from this part of China, but also more specifically, this era in the early Cretaceous period. I'd say you travel back 4 million years and there's a larger variety. The holotype material includes fragments of ribs, the distal end of one forearm, and a complete hand. Some dorsal ribs are preserved as middle shaft portions. It shows a peculiar hand morphology different from all known theropods, supporting the erection of a new taxon. Yeah, I guess that would make sense. It's still quite astounding to hear that it's just completely different, but you would assume so for a completely different species. The team's phylogenetic analysis supports the closest affinity of Mygminchian Lang with the enigmatic Fukivenator paradoxus from Japan. Mygminchian Lang possesses a peculiar combination of features in the hand, which is different from all other known theropods. It was a little repetitive. Let's see. Is there anything else? Most of the derived features in Migmenchian Lang hands are variably widespread among Peruvian Menoraptorans, in particular, among early diverging Oviraptorosaurs and Therizinosaurs, suggesting that this theropod belongs to this grade and is not particularly close to the bird lineage. Okay, I guess we can let's bring up Oviraptor, just that specific genus. Oviraptor. So this specific species of theropod dinosaur is very well renowned in China. Like I think when it comes to specifically theropods, we have found more oviraptor nesting sites compared to pretty much any other group of carnivorous dinosaur. And like it competes for or with different species of sauropods, hadrosaurs, and certain smaller ceratopsians when it comes to the abundant nesting sites that we have found of this animal, but not just of the eggs and the nests themselves, but even the mothers being buried alive with the nest and also several amongst each other. So this animal inhabited China and Mongolia around 71 million years ago during the last few million years of the Cretaceous, and likely was just feeding on different species of plants. It seems to be omnivorous and as well probably going after smaller amphibians, reptiles, and maybe even smaller species of dinosaurs.
Is this a toy?
I think that's at a park. Yeah, what it's showing here used to be a bit of like you could say it still is to an extent, but stereotype of Oviraptor because its name means egg thief. And it was originally assumed that Oviraptor was stealing or was a egg stealer. And so specifically this animal, it was proposed would go after different dinosaur nests and take the eggs. So basically eggs were presumed to be a common source of protein for this animal and fat. But that seems to be the opposite given the amount of nests that we have discovered of this animal um, also being preserved within the nest too. Now, it's not that would have been impossible for Oviraptor to occasionally raid the nests of larger sauropods like Nemectosaurus or even the Hadrosaurs. It would be quite risky, but it could certainly do it. They would also probably be slightly larger eggs, but dinosaur eggs did not become very large in general. That's a toy. Um. Uh, Also, I'm not sure if it's showing it where he's holding it with two hands, but even then,
Oh,
um,
why is there a volcano in the background?
that's your standard, or at least was dinosaur landscape depiction. At least when it comes to the barren deserts or the end of certain epochs within a certain period in the Mesozoic. Now, these are very fluffy oviraptorids. I think it might be showing dimorphism between the male and the female, or that's another species. Certain species of oviraptorids did have smaller crests than others, kind of like with what you see in different species of other theropod dinosaurs, especially back in the Jurassic and the later, well, the late Triassic and the early Jurassic coming after the Triassic. You had different species of coelophysoids, as well as different members of the Neotheropoda lineage in general that had larger crests, especially double crests, and some others had much smaller double crests for some reasons. Like, why in evolution did they decide to decrease it? Um, okay, I guess we can. Oh, that's not a bad reconstruction of an oviraptorid nest. However, the young were probably covered in feathers, but this might be of a much older depiction of an oviraptor. I mean, itself doesn't seem to have many feathers, just along the back vertebrae, as well as like the back of the skull. That used to be a common interpretation for oviraptor, a few decades back, and especially like even when it comes to the young, it's not surprising that back in the 1980s or even the 1990s, they would have been reconstructed as being pretty much naked for an oviraptor. Okay, so let's head forward to the Cenozoic era. So, from IcelandReview.com, Arctic fox population falls, but species not endangered. Okay, whatever that means. The interesting thing about Iceland and the Arctic fox is that this is the only native mammal, excluding humans to the side. It's the only native mammal to the area. There are reindeer or caribou that inhabit the country. However, they were introduced there back in the 1770s as part of a livestock experiment by one of the kings in Denmark. But apparently that didn't work out too well. However, they did end up surviving and have established a population over in eastern Iceland. There seems to be somewhere between 5 to 7,000 reindeer that inhabit the island. But the Arctic fox is not really a major predator of the herbivores. They might go after maybe a calf, but outside of that, it's feeding on different species of mollusks. So probably going after also different species of fish in the region, and also focusing on different species of seabirds. So that's its main food source. It seems to be a healthy individual, and yes, they do obtain their white coat during the winter, and then it becomes more of like a blackish tone during the summer. So the population of Arctic foxes in Iceland has fallen significantly over the past decade, according to a new conservation assessment by the Icelandic Institute of Natural History. As reported by RUV, researchers estimate that the fox population declined from around 7,800 animals in 2011 to approximately 4,700 in spring 2024, representing a decrease of roughly 40%. Yeah, wow, that's a huge drop. I mean, they're still there. Yeah, that's a happy one. Guessing it's just chasing after another Arctic fox. At least I think he's in a happy state. I mean, he could be pursuing one and trying to just get it out of its territory. I don't know. His tail is drooped down. Not necessarily sure. I would say that this is. I don't think this is a pleased fox. At least at some point in the summer. Well, the question is
Is
this a
this
real
real?
picture? Yeah, there's something off about it, especially the cubs. They look like cats to an extent. Um, yeah, I think there's something off about this picture. Okay, that looks more authentic. Yeah, so that's an Arctic fox pup. They are smaller than the red fox, but I believe they're slightly larger than the gray fox. So Arctic foxes still reach a little over 8 pounds, or pushing somewhere around 2.5 to 3 kilograms. And yes, they are omnivorous, so they'll also feed on different species of berries. And I think even occasionally lichen. That's a very small part of their diet. That's more of what the reindeer will go after. Oh, I mean, yes, I like the toy or the decoration. Yeah, these look like two very intuitive Arctic fox pups. So they do roam throughout different parts of northern Canada as well as Alaska, different parts of northern Russia, the Canadian Arctic Islands, Greenland, and northern Europe, as well as like the island of Svalbard. Yeah, this looks like a really healthy individual. He's a very distinct like physique, though. Maybe she's just a specific subspecies of Arctic fox, but I don't know if there are any distinct subpopulations of Arctic fox that have been identified. I wonder if that's still up for debate. I believe also when it comes to the ability to withstand the cold, they can handle or tolerate temperatures of negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit or pushing around what negative 70 degrees Celsius, possibly. So there's just an Arctic fox on the beach. He seems a bit thin, but I mean, it is summer. He just shed his fur coat, but he still seems thin.
It always shocks me that they change color.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what other specific mammals will do that as well. Guess you could say wolves to a somewhat extent. So let's see. An Arctic fox on a beach. Oh, so in that picture in Hornstrander West Fjords. So, despite the drop, experts say the species is not currently considered endangered. Well, yeah, but I'm just we're looking at Iceland specifically. The assessment was led by Esther Rutt Unstein-Dotter, who said the findings do not currently require special conservation measures. The findings will be presented at a seminar on the Icelandic fox on June 9th at Edda in Reykjavik. As part of the study, she noted that hunting levels should continue to be monitored closely. Guessing the hunting that the Icelandic Arctic fox is like committing on different birds in the area. So this situation would put him in a place
What?
called vulnerable or in any danger, not endangered or anything like that. This is a protected species according to the law. So of
How do we get rid
course,
of that?
um,
What? Why do they keep doing that?
yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's just forcing it up there. Well, is there anything really else? We
Nope.
Yeah, we just went over the main stuff. Okay, so a major population decrease, but still present. I also don't think I really heard much of a change when it comes to the reindeer population on the island either. However, the reindeer aren't necessarily native there, so I need to go back and see what their ecological impact has been on Iceland. And no, polar bears are also not native to Iceland as well. They just occasionally reach the island, usually coming in from Greenland occasionally. Okay, so let's head back in time, but not to the Mesozoic era or the time of the dinosaurs. Just before the Ice Age, that we might include the Ice Age as well. The Probably the Pliocene epoch. So from Sinus, unique Gomphothere assemblage found in Florida. So the Gomphotheres were a group of proboscidean or elephants that were distant relatives to the mammoths, but a bit more closely related to the American mastodon. Paleontologists have unearthed several complete skeletons of Gomphotheres, an extinct relative of elephants, at the Mount Brook fossil dig in Florida, the United States. This is not necessarily surprising, but usually we find different American mastodon remains over in Florida. Columbian mammoths, which did exist over in the Pleistocene much later in time. They did not exist back in the Pliocene epoch. So the Ice Age over in Florida, but American mastodons seem to really dominate the landscape, especially a wide range of the southeastern United States.
That many tusks makes me think, how do you get your food?
Oh yeah, these are also known as the four-tusked elephants. They still would have been quite efficient, but you could have had it where the bottom tusks, it's still up for major debate as to what these tusks might have been used for. Maybe scrubbing bark off of trees now and then, possibly to scoop up certain aquatic vegetation. There was a theory at one point with slightly earlier species, such as the Platybulodon over in Africa. I believe Platybulodon is a species of mastodon that came in from Ethiopia somewhere around 4 to 5 million years ago, likely coexisting with Ototus megalodon. At least megalodon was inhabiting the oceans at the time. And the same thing for different species of gomphotheres in general. There have been over 8 different species of gomphothere at least that have been discovered.
Wait a minute. What's gone for there?
Well, Gomphothere, like Gomphothere is technically a family of ancient proboscidean elephants distantly related to the mammoths. The mammoths belong to a different lineage. They are part of Elephantidae, though. So, when it comes to the Gomphotheres, and specifically Gomphotherium, it did have 4 tusks. This animal could reach somewhere around 5 to 6 tons, probably stand somewhere around 8 to 9 feet in height, or pushing somewhere around 2.8 meters. So close to the size of today's Asian elephants. Now, I think was mentioning Rhynchotherium. Rhynchotherium is a species of Gomphothere that inhabited Eurasia back in the Pliocene epoch, possibly extending into the Ice Age, but I believe it went extinct shortly beforehand. And also, it was an herbivore as well. So, Gomphotheres were a diverse. I already said this. These creatures first evolved in Africa in the early Miocene, roughly 23 million years ago, after which they dispersed into Europe and Asia. Yeah, they had their stronghold over in Africa, but eventually they would also reach North and South America. So by 16 million years ago, they'd reached North America
They
via.
just like to walk around.
Basically, it seemed to be a big thing during the Miocene. I'd say late Oligocene epoch, but especially the Miocene, Pliocene, and the Pleistocene epoch, or the Ice Age. And it wasn't just Gomphotheres, you had different other lineages of elephants, as well as the different species of rhinos, the large cats that were evolving. At this point, many of the species of cats were still quite small. You wouldn't really see any species of, in quote, big cat much more than 100 pounds or pushing around 40 kilograms. Or like even the canids at this point were fairly small, probably reaching somewhere between 90 to 100 pounds, or pushing maybe 35 to 40 kilograms. So by 16 million years ago, they'd reached North America via the Bering Land Bridge. And when the Isthmus of Panama rose above the sea 2.7 million years ago, Gomphotheres were waiting on the shoreline to cross into South America. Along the way, they evolved several unique features that allowed them to thrive in the new environments they encountered. Yeah, the Gomphotheres were already over in South America before the Mastodons had evolved. Eventually, the Mastodons would migrate down to South America, but they first evolved in North America. You also had it where Mastodons would make their way to Eurasia as well. So along the way, they evolved several unique features that allowed them to thrive in the new environments they encountered. This is a once in a lifetime find, said Dr. Jonathan Block, curator of vertebrate paleontology at the Florida Museum of Natural History. Dr. Block and his colleagues unearthed 5.5 million year old Gomphothere skeletons, including 1 adult and at least 7 juveniles, at a locality called the Montbrook fossil dig. It's likely the fossils were successively deposited or transported to the area. Oh, said Dr. Rachel Narducci, a collection manager of vertebrate paleontology at the Florida Museum of Natural History. So, oh, like possibly a flood sent them over? Because I was thinking like people transported them here, but this is mentioning that they were excavating them from the sediment, so that's unlikely. So that's interesting. I mean, you likely would have had floods occur during the Pliocene epoch. Now, probably a bit less so into the Ice Age. So, modern elephants, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It does seem to be when it comes to gomphotheres as well as the mastodons that these animals were also traveling in herds as well.
It looks like a dinosaur head.
Wow. Yeah. Well, gomphotheres have very elongated skull structures. Even like much more so than compared to today's elephants. Today's elephants have very short, um, almost roundish sort of skull structures. So what we're seeing with the gomphothere here, is not really existent today in the different species of proboscidean that exist. So, that looks like it could be what, well over 6 feet in length. So possibly pushing like 2.3 meters, maybe, or maybe somewhere around 7 feet. Though we don't know how. Is it giving us any measurements? Yeah, not really. So, according to the paleontologist, the Muttbrook gomphotheres belong to the genus Rhynchotherium, which was once widespread across North and Central America. We all generally know what mastodons and woolly mammoths look like, but gomphotheres aren't nearly as easy to categorize. They are pretty distinct. Let's look up another species, the Pterophodon. So Phodon.
It's supposed to be a what?
Um, Trophodon, Trophodon. Okay, so I'm missing a few things. Hmm. Okay. Then let's bring up a carnivore, Dinophilis. So Dinophelis. So, well, this model right here makes it look kind of immense, but Dinophilis is a pretty small species of cat. It's probably barely larger than the bobcat of today, or pushing maybe 30 pounds or a little over 12 kilograms. I mean, not 12. Well, actually, it could be maybe, yeah, somewhere around 12 kilograms. But this animal inhabited Ethiopia somewhere around 3.5 million years ago during the Pliocene epoch.
There's
So,
tons of pictures of this thing killing things,
well, maybe, um,
and they're like apes.
oh, well, it's probably from Walking with Beasts. It did coexist with different species of ancient hominid back in the Pliocene epoch, but it also likely was going after different species of early antelope. It might have gone after like a young proboscidean or ancient elephant calf, but even then, those were pretty large calves for these animals to be going after. They did have some of the first or earlier saber teeth for mammalian macharodontids. Well, all macharodontids were mammals. So macharodontids are the lineage of cats that would evolve into the much larger saber-toothed cats of the Ice Age of the Pleistocene epoch, such as Smilodon and Homotherium. This is actually a pretty good reconstruction of a Dinophilis. It does have a bit more of like a broader jaw structure than what you see in certain larger species compared to its body size.
No, here's another one.
Yeah, apparently they depict this animal as being like one of the main predators of early hominids. So, what I think it's might be depicting certain earlier
And another
ancestors
one.
of the jackal. Yeah, I think Walking with Beasts just made it pretty iconic. What is interesting is that they're giving this animal kind of a bit of a long tail compared to its body size. Now, I think it does seem to possibly appear that it has a much longer tail compared to lynx of today, or even certain species of cat over in southeastern Asia. But it did inhabit different parts of Africa, possibly extending into Eurasia. But this just shows what the Machaerodontids were looking like during the Pliocene epoch before they massively increased in size, even to the later Pliocene.
I like this.
Yeah, this is a really good reconstruction. It's kind of just
Kinda
showing it
does
in
remind me of a
its
puma.
um, yeah, I guess you could say towards like the neck and the skull structure. They're barely giving it a
Oh,
canine,
I
but
just meant
maybe,
how it looks like it's walking.
well, almost like maybe cougar-like forelimbs, but the hind limbs look more of like almost a bear and a lynx to an extent.
Yeah, I just saw a bear face. Right when you said bear, I'm looking at its face going, "Does that look like a bear?"
To an extent, even the face has like a, at least of that depiction, was almost like a short-faced bear. There were different species of bear that had evolved at this point. They and some were not necessarily small either, like reaching several hundred pounds or over 400 kilograms. Yeah, as you can see, like the canine of specifically Dinofelis is very wide compared to later species of saber-toothed cat. Like especially when you're looking at Smilodon, earlier, actually certain species that evolved slightly before Dinofelis, especially like the Nimravids, such as Barbarofelis.
This looks
But
like a tiger.
yeah, they're giving it like that. Iconic saber-toothed tiger look, even though it's likely that, or it's possible that this animal didn't have a tiger stripe accumulation to it. So it's possibly just kind of like a plain sort of a color, just overall fur structure or fur, um, just plumage.
Okay. What?
Yeah, this guy doesn't really belong to any specific species. Just looks like somebody combined like a leopard, tiger, and a lion together with some canines. It doesn't even look like something similar to a Dinofelis, a Smilodon, um, Barbophelus at all.
This looks like a leopard.
Yeah,
Got a
they are.
weird face.
I'd say maybe even a jaguar to an extent. They are giving him a very
That face is odd.
um
It reminds me of a,
like a cartoon to an extent.
no, I was thinking Dimetrodon.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, this is a great, great, great nephew of Dimetrodon, but Dimetrodon was a proto mammal back in the Permian period about 275 million years ago. It was originally, or there were theories proposing that Dimetrodon might have been the ancestor to virtually all mammals, but it's been some time since the theory, for the most part, has been disputed.
Wait,
But it's still, we're all still nephews.
it look at his face.
Yeah, it does have
Man,
a somewhat
face.
similarity. Well, this specific Dimetrodon, it seems to be a bit of like a more, they're giving it like a slightly elongated jaw structure. I mean, you could say Dimetrodon doesn't have exactly like a short, round shaped skull. But definitely it's very different from the species over in Europe. So this is likely referring to the North American species.
Okay, wait, there. And he just ate somebody.
This is the type of model that I was thinking of.
Yep.
He looks like what?
He looks like he just ate somebody. And
Yeah, he does. He looks very proud about
I know.
himself.
It's like he's smiling, like, I got somebody."
And then they gave the sail like a butterfly sort of plumage, like the sort of eye structures that you see on different species of butterflies' wings. But Dimetrodon, like Dinofelis, was a carnivore, except Dimetrodon was not preying on any mammals because mammals had not evolved yet. It was likely feeding on different species of proto mammals over in North America, and then with the other species over in Germany. Also, other proto mammals, different species of reptiles and amphibians like Diplocalus, at least over in North America, seem to be a favorite among Dimetrodon individuals. Okay, so let's head back to the Gomphotheres. They had a variety of body sizes, and the shape of their tusks differed widely between species. In addition to the usual pair of upper tusks common in proboscideans, some Gomphotheres had a second set attached to the lower jaw, which were fashioned by natural selection into increasingly implausible configurations. Many species had small lower tusks that splayed apart or extended in parallel at the tip of a significantly elongated jaw. Tusks in the Platybulodon gomphotheres were flattened and joined, resembling a massive pair of buck teeth, which they used to scrape bark from trees. I'm not sure if we have evidence, like we have um, made some chemical or accomplished some chemical isotopes on the bottom tusks of Platybulodon, showing that they were scraping bark, um, or it's still just up there for theory. So the Montsbrook discovery gives new life to Rhynchotherium gomphotheres and provides scientists with the opportunity to learn more about the charismatic fauna that once populated North America. Actually, let's look up the American mastodon. So AM. Oh, okay. So the mastodons, they are related to the mammoths. They do belong to a different genus completely, being Mastodon, whereas the mammoths, many of them belonging to Mammothus or even Mammut. Also, they're going to be feeding on different types of plant material as well. Usually, mastodons, when you're looking at their overall tooth structure, they're feeding on different species of leaves. Now, it's showing here what looks to be possibly a spruce that it's munching on. It's possible that American mastodons might have been munching on spruce occasionally, or certain pine needles, like occasionally moose will do today,
Okay, this is mastodon versus mammoth.
but probably not. No, they're two mastodons. This is based on a fossil that we've discovered of two mastodons locked in battle,
Oh, well,
or they died at once.
they put mastodon versus and mammoths. That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at the overall morphology of these two, they look very similar. Mastodons, they do not have that elongated or upper vertical stature that you see for mammoths or on mammoths. Also, when it comes to their head structure, mammoths are somewhat well renowned for having that taller, um, just I guess, heightened upper head, whereas mastodons barely have a bit of like a hill on the top of their head structure. So it's a bit more similar to today's elephants in many instances. But um when it comes to the overall body structure, they do not have a massive vertical structure. It's basically this even horizontal um just shape when it comes to the back vertebrae, also even looking towards the cervical vertebrae or along the neck structure. They did have what seemed to be possibly as long of tails or slightly longer than today's elephants. Now, when it comes to the American mastodons, they did not inhabit the cold, frigid mammoth steppe areas of further north. Well, depending on when in the Pleistocene, occasionally they would range into Alaska. We have found mastodons over in Alaska. So.
Wait. Is that why this guy's head is flat?
Pretty much. This is one of those, or it seems to be one of the older reconstructions of mastodons from the 1940s or 1950s. Mastodons have been extensively studied since the 1700s. I mean, you had it where um, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin were actually doing studies on um, American mastodons. So they were one of the first prehistoric animals to be extensively researched back in pre-colonial America. Um, well, I guess not pre-colonial; it would have been colonial America. So let's see. Oh yeah, that was also a really good reconstruction. We have found somewhat like the mammoths, different instances where mastodons died together. So they were social animals too. Let's see. Is there anything else? Oh, so a fossil site in Southern California is the only other place in the U.S. that has produced a large sample of Rhynchotherium juveniles in adults. Yeah, Rhynchotherium, I think, could still reach somewhere around 2 to 3 tons, depending on the species. We're already learning so much about the anatomy and biology of this group that we didn't know before, including new facts about the shape of the skull and tusks. Also, it seems to be with the American mastodon that this animal was probably roaming. Well, it obviously was roaming different parts of South America, Mexico, and northern North America. But it seems to be that there could be more than somewhere between 4 to 6 different species of mastodon that existed during the Pleistocene or the Ice Age, not really competing with mammoths for different types of vegetation, considering they had completely different or distinct feeding behaviors. So the mastodons, somewhat like the gomphotheres, were feeding on different species of leaves, but it also seems to be the gomphotheres have a bit of a mixed feeding structure looking at their teeth. And the mammoths are focusing on different species of grasses. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Happy International Gomphothere Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.